The watch behind the glass, it was a rainy Thursday afternoon in New York City. The streets were soaked and people rushed beneath umbrellas, chasing warmth, chasing time. Inside a luxury boutique on Fifth Avenue, time stood still. The air smelled like polished wood and expensive leather. Soft music played in the background and diamonds sparkled under warm lights. A watch sat alone behind a thick glass case. It was not just any watch. It was rare, handcrafted, Swiss, the kind collectors whispered about, the kind most people never touched. Keanu Reeves, wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans, walked into the boutique. His beard was a little rough, his hair a little messy. He looked like a quiet man who had just come in from the cold. He had no bodyguards, no assistants, just a man with gentle eyes and hands tucked in his pockets. He stood in front of the watch display for a long time. He didn't press his face to the glass. He didn't point. He just looked, calm and curious. A young sales associate named Taylor noticed him. She had been trained to spot buyers by their shoes, their wristwear, the smell of their cologne. And to her, Keanu didn't check the boxes. He looked ordinary. She whispered something under her breath and rolled her eyes. But the store manager, Mr. Halberd, saw her reaction and motioned her forward. "Go see what he wants," he said sharply. Taylor sighed, adjusted her blazer, and walked toward Keanu with a forced smile. "Hi there," she said, her voice smooth. "Can I help you find something a little more within your range?" Keanu turned to her gently. "I was just looking at that watch," he said, pointing softly. She gave a practiced laugh. "Oh, that's not really for browsing, sir. It's for collectors. Limited edition. Very expensive." He nodded. "May I see it?" She hesitated. "Do you have an appointment?" He shook his head. "No, just passing by." She looked him up and down and replied, "Perhaps you'd like to see some of our more affordable models." Keanu smiled politely and said nothing. He simply turned back to the glass, eyes still fixed on the watch. And then, in that silence, something strange happened. An elderly woman, seated on a velvet bench nearby, had been watching the entire exchange. She stood up and walked over. "Excuse me," she said to Taylor. "Do you know who that is?" Taylor looked confused. "Someone who clearly can't afford that piece." The old woman chuckled. "That man is Keanu Reeves." The color drained from Taylor's face. She blinked, her mouth slightly open. Mr. Halberd, now noticing the tension, walked over quickly. "Sir," he said with a new tone, "I am terribly sorry for the confusion. Of course you may view any item you wish." Keanu turned, his face calm as still water. "I appreciate that, but I wasn't looking to buy. I just wanted to see how it felt to look at something timeless." His words hung in the air like poetry. The old woman smiled at him. "You always were poetic," she said. Keanu looked at her. His eyes softened. "Mrs. Gallagher?" She nodded. "You fixed my son's bike 20 years ago when you didn't even know his name." Keanu chuckled. "I remember. Blue Schwinn bent wheel. You told him kindness is always free." Taylor stood frozen, her eyes flicking between them, guilt rising, shame creeping up her neck. Keanu nodded to Mrs. Gallagher. "It's good to see you again." He turned to Taylor and offered his hand. "Don't worry. We all judge sometimes." Her hands trembled. She shook his hand and whispered, "I'm sorry." He nodded once, gently. "It's okay." Keanu turned and walked toward the door, but just before leaving, he looked back and smiled. "Oh, and by the way," he said, "that watch is beautiful, but time is what we do with it." Then he walked out into the rain. No umbrella, no rush, just him in the street. The boutique was silent. Even the music seemed to pause. Taylor turned to her manager, her face red with embarrassment. Mr. Halberd said nothing. He simply looked down, realizing that the store hadn't just failed a customer. They had failed a moment. What they didn't know, what the world didn't know, was that Keanu Reeves was not done. What came next would turn this simple visit into a story the whole world would remember. The note on the napkin, the rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. Keanu walked 2 blocks in silence, his hands in his hoodie pocket, his eyes looking up at the gray sky. Water dripped from the brim of his hoodie, but he didn't seem to mind. He wasn't upset. He wasn't angry. He was thinking. Thinking about the way people look through others, not at them. He ducked into a small, quiet diner, the kind of place where the booths had cracked red leather seats and the coffee was poured before you asked for it. The waitress behind the counter was wiping down mugs with a towel that had seen better days. She looked up, saw him, and gave a tired smile. "Take any seat you want, sugar," she said. Keanu nodded and sat by the window. A young busboy no older than 17 came over with a menu. He had thick glasses and a nervous smile. Would you like coffee, sir?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, please, thank you." The busboy hurried off, returning quickly with a steaming mug. He paused as he set it down. "You look familiar." Keanu smiled. "You think so?" The boy narrowed his eyes. "Are you that guy from the action movies?" Keanu grinned. "Maybe. Depends which ones." The boy laughed. "I knew it. Dude, my mom's gonna freak." "Tell her I said hi," Keanu said warmly. "I will." The boy walked away beaming, almost dropping a glass in excitement. Keanu took a sip of the bitter coffee and pulled out a napkin. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen, and began to write something slowly. He paused often, lost in thought. Words came, then stopped, then came again. Outside the window, the city kept moving. Cars splashed through puddles. People kept walking, rushing to nowhere. But inside the diner, something quiet was forming. Something that would soon ripple far beyond the glass. After finishing his drink, Keanu folded the napkin neatly, placed a crisp $100 bill beneath it, and walked over to the counter to pay. The waitress tried to wave him off. "You're Keanu, you don't gotta tip that much." He smiled. "I'm not tipping for the coffee, I'm tipping for the kindness." He nodded to her, then turned to the busboy. "What's your name?" "Danny," the boy replied. "Keep helping people, Danny, even when no one sees." "Yes, sir." Keanu walked out into the street again. The folded napkin stayed behind, unnoticed for a while. When the waitress finally saw it, she picked it up and read what he had written. "We judge too fast. We see too little. Slow down. Look deeper. Everyone carries something precious inside them, even the ones who walk in with wet shoes and quiet eyes." The waitress stood frozen. The $100 bill didn't move her. But the note? It did something else. It made her sit down. It made her remember her father's words from years ago. Words almost identical. She didn't know that the message on that napkin would be shared online within hours. She didn't know that someone would post a photo of it with the caption, "Keanu Reeves just left this at our diner. The world needs more of this." And the world noticed. By nightfall, the photo had been shared thousands of times. The internet lit up with comments, not just fans, not just followers, but people who felt something when they read it. This gave me chills. I needed this today. Why can't more people be like this? But while the world began to talk, Keanu Reeves was already somewhere else. The next morning, he was at a private workshop outside the city. Inside, a small team of young engineers and watchmakers were busy assembling unique timepieces. The place was not open to the public, but Keanu walked in through the side door like he belonged there. He did, because he helped fund the place years ago. Joseph, a master watchmaker in his late 50s, looked up from his desk and smiled. "Been a while," he said, pulling off his magnifying glasses. "Too long," Keanu replied. "Still chasing time? Trying to slow it down?" Joseph motioned to the bench. "Got something for you." He handed over a wooden box. Inside was a watch. Not gold, not flashy, but hand-engraved, elegant and perfectly balanced. The leather strap was dyed with natural ink, the dial carved with tiny symbols. "Your design," Joseph said. Keanu smiled. "It's beautiful. So what brings you here now?" Keanu looked out the window. "I saw something yesterday. Watch behind glass. and a young woman who thought I wasn't good enough to look at it. Joseph raised an eyebrow. You want to show her she was wrong? Keanu shook his head. I want to show her she can be better. How? Keanu's eyes lit with purpose. By giving her something she's never seen before, something not made with ego, but meaning. And so began a plan. A plan not for revenge, not for pride, but to teach, to lift, to open eyes. While the boutique on Fifth Avenue remained quiet that morning, a small package was already on its way. Inside it was a custom box, a handwritten letter and something that would change the store forever. But before the package reached the boutique, someone else was about to speak out, and it wasn't who anyone expected. The girl in the mirror. It had been 3 days since Keanu walked into the boutique, 3 days since the folded napkin in the diner went viral. And now, Taylor, the young sales associate who had judged him, stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was perfect, her blazer pressed, her hair smooth, but her eyes looked tired in a different way, not from lack of sleep, but from something heavier, guilt, regret, a weight she hadn't expected. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop. Friends sent her the napkin photo. Some joked, others asked if the story was real. One text hit her harder than all the rest. It was from her younger brother Liam. You used to say people mattered more than money. What happened to you? She had no answer. At work, the air had changed. People whispered when she walked by. The manager, Mr. Halberd, avoided her. No one said it out loud, but they all knew. She had turned away a man who had shown the world more grace than she had ever known how to offer. Then on the 4th day, the package arrived. A slim box with no label, just her name written neatly in black ink. She opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was a simple wooden case unlike anything the store sold. She opened the lid and gasped. The watch inside was stunning. Handcrafted. Minimalist. But what stood out was the back of the watch. Engraved into the metal were the words, "You saw a price, I saw time. May this help you see more." Beneath the watch was a note. It wasn't typed. It wasn't fancy. Just a short message, written in clear handwriting. Dear Taylor, it's not too late to start seeing people again. Kindness is more valuable than any watch. Keanu. She sat down hard in the nearest chair. Her hands covered her mouth. Tears welled up, not from embarrassment anymore, but from something deeper. She had been given a second chance. Not scolded, not punished, forgiven. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Taylor did something she hadn't done in years. She walked to her childhood neighborhood, to a small church where she used to volunteer. The doors were open and a group of kids were drawing with crayons at a long table. A kind woman smiled at her and said, "We're always happy to have more hands." Taylor joined them. No one knew who she was. No one cared what watch she wore. She colored beside a little girl who had lost her front tooth and wore her hair in messy braids. "You draw good," the girl said. Taylor smiled. "So do you." She stayed for 2 hours, and when she left, she didn't feel the weight anymore. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the story wasn't finished, because something else had started to spread. The diner where Keanu left the napkin had suddenly become a place of quiet magic. People traveled from all over just to sit at that booth. Some came to take photos, but others came for something more real. They started leaving notes too. One man left a note that read, "I was going to quit my job today. This changed my mind." A single mother left. "I thought no one saw me. I was wrong." The wall behind the counter was now filled with napkins, each carrying words from strangers who had been touched by a moment that was never supposed to go viral. And every day, the busboy Danny collected them, cataloged them in a binder, and wrote a small note of his own at the bottom of each one. Someone out there needed this. News outlets started calling it the napkin movement. But while reporters and influencers tried to trace the story back to Keanu Reeves, he remained silent. No interviews, no comment. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was chasing something else. A few days later, a quiet knock came at the door of a children's hospital on the edge of town. The head nurse opened it, and there stood Keanu, holding a small bag and wearing the same humble hoodie. "You asked for someone to help fix the game room?" he asked. The nurse nodded slowly. "We were hoping for a donation, maybe. But you're here?" Keanu smiled. "I brought tools and pizza." He spent 6 hours fixing old chairs, repainting walls, and hanging up shelves. He played video games with kids who didn't know his name and didn't care. One boy in a wheelchair with tubes connected to his arms said, "You play like my grandpa." Keanu laughed. "Then your grandpa must be awesome." By the time he left, the game room looked new again. But more than that, hope had returned. What no one expected was what came next, because someone who had once seen him as just another customer was about to become the person who would help change everything. Taylor. And her next step would make headlines in every country around the world. The letter that lit the fire. The morning sun spilled through the glass windows of the boutique like golden syrup. The air was quiet. The usual clinking of display keys and the murmured voices of clients had been replaced with an awkward hush that had lasted for days. Taylor walked through the store with a different posture now, not stiff with pride but softened with humility. Every step she took felt like a chance to walk a new path. She wore the same suit as before, but it felt different now. She carried something more valuable than designer fabric. She carried purpose. On her lunch break, she sat alone in the break room with a pen in her hand. For over an hour, she stared at a blank piece of paper. She didn't want to type. This had to be handwritten, just like his note. Finally, with trembling fingers and a full heart, she wrote, "Dear Mr. Reeves, you didn't have to forgive me. You didn't have to send the watch. But you did. And because of that, you changed me. I judged you. I judged everyone. But now, I want to change something bigger than me. I want to do something that helps people the way you helped me. Quietly, gently, truly. Please tell me how, or let me try." With gratitude, Taylor, she posted the letter, not expecting a reply. She didn't know if it would even reach him. All she knew was that it had to be sent. But Keanu did see it. 3 days later, while visiting a small school in New Jersey that helped children with autism learn how to express emotions through art, he opened her letter on a wooden bench outside the art room. He read every word twice. Then, slowly, he smiled. He didn't reply with a message. Not yet. Instead, he made a phone call. And that phone call started something bigger than either of them could have imagined. 1 week later, Taylor received a formal-looking envelope with no return address. Inside was a plane ticket to Los Angeles, a hotel reservation, and a simple card. It read, "If you're serious, meet me at this address. No suits. Bring an open mind." She didn't hesitate. When she arrived in Los Angeles, the air felt different. Warmer, lighter. But her stomach twisted with nerves. The next morning, she took a cab to the address. It wasn't a studio. It wasn't a mansion. It was a community center in South Central. Kids played basketball outside. Music drifted through the air from an open window. A mural painted on the side of the building showed faces of all colors smiling together. Taylor walked in and found Keanu crouched beside a little boy with broken glasses, helping him fix a Lego tower. He looked up, saw her, and smiled. "You came." "I meant what I wrote," she said quietly. "Then come meet everyone." For the rest of the day, Taylor saw a world she had never entered before. Teenagers teaching coding to children, elderly women serving homemade food in the kitchen, single fathers leading art classes. It wasn't loud. It wasn't polished. But it was real, and Keanu was part of it all. Not as a guest, not as a celebrity, as someone who swept the floors and painted signs and listened. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Keanu and Taylor sat outside on the curb sipping iced tea. "Why here?" she asked. "Because real change starts where people have nothing left to lose, but everything still worth fighting for." "And the boutique?" she asked. "What about it?" "I want to do something," she said. "Something that makes up for what I did." Not just for me, but for everyone who ever felt looked down on. Keanu looked at her and saw something he valued more than talent or money. Growth. He nodded. Then let's turn that boutique into something new. Taylor blinked. What do you mean? You'll see. A month later, the doors of the Fifth Avenue boutique reopened after a quiet renovation. But it wasn't just polished marble or new lighting. There was something different. The front window no longer showcased the most expensive watch. Instead, it held a single item, a small photo in a simple wooden frame. The photo was of the diner booth, where Keanu left the napkin. Next to it was a note. Time isn't measured in seconds, it's measured in how we make others feel. Inside, every customer was greeted the same, whether in suits or sandals. Every staff member had taken part in a new program Taylor had helped launch, where they volunteered once a week at shelters, schools, or care centers. And in a quiet room in the back of the boutique was a wall of letters from people around the world who had read the story, seen the napkin, and shared their own tales of kindness. People cried when they visited, and one day, a blind man walked in, guided by his daughter. When he asked to feel the new watch design Keanu had helped create, the staff didn't pause. They sat with him, let him touch every curve, told him every story, and then gave it to him for free. He wept. The internet couldn't keep up. Every outlet wanted the story. Every show wanted interviews. But Keanu refused all of them. He wasn't interested in being the headline. He wanted the story to be the spark. And it was. Because what happened next wasn't a news clip or a tweet. It was a wave, a movement, and it started with a mistake. The mistake that moved mountains' rain tapped gently against the boutique windows, just like it had the day Keanu first walked in. But this time inside was laughter, kindness, and something new. Respect. The walls told stories now. Real stories. One corner of the store held a digital frame showing videos sent in from all over the world. People helping strangers, surprising old friends, hugging family after long years apart. All inspired by a napkin and a man who said nothing but meant everything. But even the purest movement will be tested. That test came one quiet Sunday. A video leaked online. It was old, taken years before any of this happened. In the video, Keanu was seen walking through a crowd, pushing a man back after the man had shouted something cruel to a woman nearby. Keanu didn't punch. He didn't yell. But his voice in the video was sharp. Say that again, and I'll make sure you never speak to another woman that way. The clip cut off there. The internet exploded. Headlines screamed, Keanu Reeves caught threatening man? Hero or hypocrite? Was kindness just a mask? And like a storm, doubt crept in. Some turned their backs. Others argued in defense. But Taylor knew the truth. She had seen too much. Felt too much. She called Keanu. He answered quietly, as he always did. Did you see it? She asked. Yes. Do you want to speak out? No. But people are turning this into something it's not. He paused for a long moment before replying. Then they need to be reminded why this movement started. And it was never about me. The next morning, Taylor did something no one expected. She stood in front of the boutique's story wall. A crowd had gathered outside, reporters, customers, skeptics, believers. She took a deep breath and said into the microphone, A video came out yesterday, and some are asking if the man behind this movement is real. I can't speak for Keanu Reeves, but I can speak for what he's done. I judged him. He forgave me. He inspired me. And together we built something that now helps thousands. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. So let me be clear. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. Standing up to hate isn't hypocrisy. It's humanity. And if that moment years ago stopped one woman from feeling powerless, then it was an act of courage, not cruelty. The crowd was silent. Then from the back, someone clapped. Then another. And another. A woman stepped forward. She looked familiar. Taylor. Recognized her, the woman from the video, the one who had been insulted. She stepped up beside Taylor and took the microphone. I was there. The man in that video had followed me from the station. He called me disgusting things. And no one said, A word no one but him. Keanu Reeves didn't threaten that man, he protected me, and I've never forgotten it. She held up a small paper. After that day I started writing stories again. I stopped being afraid. And 2 weeks ago, my book got published. The dedication says, "For the stranger who reminded me, I mattered." The crowd erupted. News anchors changed their tone. Hashtags flipped overnight. KeanuReal, your kindness, with courage took your time to change. But Keanu, he was not watching any of it. He was in a quiet hospital in rural Ohio, reading books to children undergoing cancer treatment. No cameras, no press, just him, a blanket and a book about dragons and bravery. When one of the children asked him, "Are you famous?" he smiled and replied, "Only to people who still believe in good." Meanwhile, back at the boutique, something extraordinary happened. A man entered wearing torn clothes, mud on his boots, and a deep sadness in his eyes. People looked but didn't stare. A new staff member greeted him with warmth. "Can I help you?" The man looked around. "I just wanted to see the place, the one from the story. My wife used to read about it before she passed." He held up a crumpled photo. It was a screenshot of the napkin Keanu had written on, printed out and folded many times. "She believed in this," he whispered. She believed in kindness. Taylor, who had just returned to the floor, walked over and gently asked, "What was her name?" "Claire." "Would you like to leave something for her?" she said, guiding him to the wall. He took a fresh napkin and wrote 4 simple words Claire believed. "I do." And he pinned it to the wall with shaking hands. By evening, 1,000 more people had written new napkins, sent in letters, or posted their stories online. The world didn't just believe again, they felt again. And it wasn't because of a movie star. It was because of a moment, a choice, a napkin. And the truth that sometimes being underestimated is the beginning of something far greater. But Keanu Reeves, he still had one last step to take, because kindness is not complete until it circles back. And the final circle was waiting back at the boutique where this all began. The return to glass, the boutique on 5th Avenue looked different now, not just on the inside, but in its very soul. It was no longer a place where only the wealthy walked with confidence. It had become a place where kindness was displayed like luxury. Stories, not price tags, were the real treasures behind the glass. It was a Tuesday morning when he returned. Keanu Reeves stepped through the front door quietly, just as he had before. No entourage, no announcement, just him, wearing the same black hoodie, jeans, and a gentle look in his eyes. But this time, the staff didn't look away. They smiled. The new greeter at the door, an elderly man who had once been homeless, now trained through the store's outreach program, greeted him warmly. "Welcome back, sir," he said with pride. Keanu nodded. "Thank you. Good to see you." The boutique had changed, but something inside him needed to see it for himself. He walked past displays that once sparkled only with diamonds. Now, they were surrounded by messages from around the world. Letters of hope, photos of moments, even napkins, framed like art. He reached the center of the store, where the original glass case still stood. The watch he had once admired was gone. In its place was a plaque with his quote engraved on it, "Time is what we do with it." Taylor approached from the side, her face calm and centered. Her journey had transformed her. Gone was the polished mask. What remained was someone who had stepped into the fire and come out honest. "I hoped you'd come back," she said. Keanu looked at her. "You've done something beautiful here." She smiled, then reached beneath the counter and pulled out a small, worn envelope. "Someone left this for you. Yesterday." Keanu took it and slowly opened it. Inside was a letter, written in careful handwriting. "Dear Keanu, my son is alive today because of you. He read your napkin message on a night he almost gave up. Instead, he put down the pills and picked up his guitar. Now he writes songs that give people hope. Thank you for seeing people, for being the quiet voice when the world is loud. A mother who will always be grateful." Keanu blinked slowly. He folded the letter, held it in his hand for a moment, then tucked it into his coat. "Sometimes," he whispered, "you never know the weight of your words." Until someone shows you. Taylor nodded. It's why we started the project. The project? She pointed toward a wall with a large digital display titled The Human Hour. We launched a global kindness challenge. 1 hour a week. Just doing something for someone else, no money, no spotlight, just help. It's reached over 20 countries now. Keanu smiled. You led that? We all did, she said softly. You gave us the spark. At that moment, a small girl walked in holding her father's hand. She looked no older than 7. She had a pink scarf on her head and her eyes were filled with curiosity. Are you him? She asked Keanu, walking forward. I might be, he replied with a smile. Who do you think I am? The man who writes magic on napkins. Keanu knelt down. I used to. Do you want to write one? She nodded excitedly. Taylor handed her a clean napkin and a marker. The girl took a moment, then carefully scribbled, You are not invisible. She handed it to Keanu. This is for the next person who feels sad. He looked at her with tears rising behind his calm smile. You're already doing more than most adults, he said. She beamed and skipped away with her father. Keanu placed her napkin on the wall himself, the 5001st message, and maybe the most important. As he stood back up, the boutique fell silent. Not out of awe, but out of unity. Every person there knew something rare had just happened. Not an event, not a promotion, a moment. Outside, the world kept spinning. Sirens rang, people rushed. But inside that store, people felt time pause again. That night, Keanu didn't attend a party or a premiere. He returned to the same diner from weeks before, the same red booth by the window. Danny, the young busboy, was now training to be a manager. He saw Keanu and grinned. Back again? Couldn't stay away. He brought over a mug of coffee without being asked. Want to leave another napkin? He asked. Keanu shook his head gently. No, he said. It's not my turn anymore. He looked around and saw a woman sitting alone across the room. Tears in her eyes, staring at one of the napkins on the wall. Keanu took a fresh napkin, handed it to Danny, and nodded toward her. Give this to her. Tell her it's okay to be seen. Yes, sir. Keanu watched as Danny walked across the diner. He smiled. He didn't need the world to know. He just needed the world to feel. And now, they did. Because sometimes the quietest man in the room leaves the loudest legacy.